Have you ever wondered how schools and universities manage thousands of student accounts and devices seamlessly? Today, we're exploring domain controllers, the backbone of network management in education. From high schools to colleges, these systems ensure secure access and smooth operations across campuses. In this video, we are going to create a domain controller and DNS server on a virtual machine running Windows Server 2022. We will then connect to a separate virtual machine that is running Windows 11 in the same virtual network and join that PC to our newly created domain controller. Let's get started. All right, so as you can see, I have two virtual machines here, one of which is named DomCon, that's short for domain controller. This is the one that is running Microsoft Server 2022. You can see it is connected to the internet because it does have a public IP address right here. The other one is just a node. It's a simple computer that's running Microsoft 11. I've given it, I believe, 2 virtual CPU cores and 16 gigabytes of RAM. Other than that, it's nothing too special. Now, if you're confused on what any of this is, I've made a video already on creating virtual machines in Microsoft Azure. I'll put a link for that right here. If you're not watching it on a smart TV, you should be able to click it. Anyways, moving forward, we have a domain controller. So the first thing we're going to do is take a look at the network interface card on our domain controller. We're going to do that by heading over to network settings once we click on the DomCon and clicking on the network interface right here. The first thing we want to do is actually set this to a static IP address. And the reason for this is because we're going to want to have our host computer, or computers if you have a multitude of them, to point to the server's IP address. And in order for a constant connection to be maintained across the entire network, we're going to want to set this computer's IP address to static. So we'll do that right here. And go ahead and jot this down. Yours might be different, but mine is 10.0.0.4. I will jot that down right now. And we're going to click Save. We're going to hop back over to our virtual machines here and grab the public IP address of your Windows 11 system. We're then going to head down to the search bar and go to Remote Desktop and remote into that PC. What happened there? I'm not sure why I didn't copy it. Whatever, I can still see it right here. 104.42.21.221. Okay. Now, remember from before, we're not going to be able to log in using our own name that we're using on our own system. We're actually going to use the administrative account that we created when setting up this virtual machine. So for this one, the username is just simple.user. And we're in. All right, first thing we're going to do is open up our command prompt with Windows key R, CMD, and we're going to try to ping our domain controller, the server that we created. So let's say ping -t, which will perpetually send the ping out until we actually manually kill that command here. And the IP address was 10.0.0.4. And you can see that it is attempting to ping the system. And even though the two computers are in the same virtual network, it's not reaching the server. Why is that? Well, that's because we need to set up the server's firewall. So let's jump out of the system here and go back over to our domain controller. Okay, this time we're going to grab the... Oh, one more thing I want to do real quick. Just to avoid confusion, you can change the background of one of these computers. So go into display settings. This is something I like to do when I'm working with two different computers that might have the same background when you start them. Go over to personalization, background, and for picture, I like using Windows Spotlight. They have some nice pictures here. All right, that's it. Real simple. Okay, back over to our domain controller. Okay, so we're going to grab the IP address right here. And we're going to open up another remote desktop connection, this time using the IP address of our domain controller. And again, we're not going to use our own name, unless of course that's the user account you created. But for me, I created a user called Big Boss props to any of you if you know what game that's from. All right. Let this connect. And I'm going to move this over here so that we have our domain controller on the left and we have our client running Windows 11 on the right. All right, let's maximize this here. Server Manager we're going to come back to in a little bit. So let's minimize this for now and go ahead and click down here and we're going to open Windows Firewall. So wf.msc should pop up. There we go. And we want to allow in the pings that are being sent to this system from our other virtual system that's currently pinging it. So we're going to click on Inbound Rules. Let's maximize this. And if you remember from the video where we were examining network traffic between two computers using Wireshark, you'll remember that ping uses a protocol called ICMP. And this is what we're going to sort for in the protocol here. And ICMP version 4, let's go ahead and widen this. Okay, you can see the ICMP echo requests are actually being blocked right now. That is why our other system is not able to receive any response back from the server here. So we're just going to click on these and say enable rule. And if we go back over to our other system that's currently trying to communicate with this one, we should all of a sudden see that, look at that, it is now receiving a response back from our server. Okay, so we've got that taken care of. The two computers can now communicate with each other over the network. Awesome. So the next thing we're going to do is come on over back to the server. Let's go ahead and maximize this here. And we're done with this, so we can go ahead and exit out of this window right here. Now remember I said we're going to come back to Server Manager. So go down here, open up the server. And we don't need to see that. All right, click on Add Roles and Features. And click Next. Click Next. Next. And we want this computer to run Active Directory domain services. And you can see this is what the server will have to install. These are kind of like dependencies that need to be added to the system before this can be promoted to a domain controller. So we'll say Add Features. Okay, and we'll say Next. And just click through this, and we'll say Install. All right, you can see that the dependencies have been installed, so we can go ahead and close this. You can see that the server is ready to be deployed. We're going to do that by clicking right here and say promote this server to a domain controller. Now the system will need to reboot after we do this, but before we do that, we need to actually specify what we want this domain to be, what the name of the domain is. So we're going to say add a new forest, and the root domain name, this is going to be foxhound.gov. So that will be our root domain name for this domain controller, which also is going to double as a DNS server. So we'll say Next. And give yourself a password here. Do not forget this one, it's very important. Okay, we're just going to keep clicking Next here. And this will autofill in a second here. There we go. And just keep clicking Next here. And install. Now this is the part where you'll have to reboot your system as soon as it is finished. Okay, now hop back over to Microsoft Azure and refresh this page because your domain controller might have been assigned a new public IP address. So we'll just make sure that didn't change. And we'll go ahead and copy that. It's a little harder to copy. Actually, let me just do this. Let me just click on the actual virtual machine and copy it this way. That's a little easier. There we go. All right. Yeah, it stayed the same. So we'll go ahead and connect. And notice, if I try to connect again, oh, look at that. It won't let me connect. Why is that? Well, because now that this is a domain controller, it's now been commissioned as a server with a fully qualified domain name. So we actually need to type that full domain name in here. So we'll go down to more choices, use a different account, and we'll say foxhound.gov, which is the one that we created, /big boss, or in my case, big.boss. Yours will be whatever you created, and put in that same password. And this should allow us access at this point. Yep, there we go. Cool. For me, this took about 5 minutes to finish, so I went ahead and grabbed myself a cold beverage. Hope you did too. Anyways, we're back. And we can go ahead and close this. And the first thing we're going to do is look up Active Directory users and computers. So just type that in here. Here we go. And you can see, here's the domain we created right here. Domain controllers. That's this system that we're on right now. And users. You can see here's Big Boss, the user we created. And guest access. That's pretty much standard in every domain that is created. Other defaults that come preloaded on every domain: domain admins, domain users, domain guests, controllers, computers. The main ones I want to pay attention to are domain admins and domain users. The first thing we're going to do is create a few new organizational units, which are folders that contain users, they could contain other domains. So we're going to go over here to foxhound.gov, and we're going to say new organizational unit, OU. We're going to call this one officers. And let's create another one. You can also create another organizational unit by clicking on this button right here. So we'll create another one, and we'll say clones. And let's create one more OU for the errand boy. All right. So we got Foxhound here. We've got officers, and as a child folder in officers, we have clones, and we have another OU for the errand boy. So we can actually add users to these organizational units here. So let's do that right now. So we can add an agent in here. Or excuse me, we can add an officer. We'll say this is Roy Campbell. And login name will just be roy.campbell. Okay, nice and easy. Next. We can assign a password for this person. We'll just say password, exclamation point, password with a capital P, exclamation point. Don't do this in real life. It's a really weak password that's easily crackable. All right, and then we'll force Roy to change this weak password the next time he logs in. How about that? All right, so that one's done. And in here, let's make our clones. We can add our clones here. Here we've got Solid Snake. And logon name for this one will just be Snake. Okay. And then we've got, we'll just do the same thing. Password 1. Password 1. Easy peasy. Lemon squeezy. Let's add a few more. Let's do Liquid Snake. And logon name will just be Liquid. Oops. Here we go. Password 1. Password 1. And we'll do one more, shall we? New user. Should we do Solidus or George Sears? We'll do George Sears. But the logon name will be Solidus. There we go. Next, same deal. Password 1 with the capital P. And last but not least, let's create a user for our office errand boy, shall we? We'll go in here, say Elon, last name, mustard stain. And what do we want for the logon name? How about Dunce Clown? Dunce Clown at foxhound.gov. Seems fitting, right? Alright, password. Same deal. Password 1. Cool. Now, let's say we wanted Roy Campbell the officer in here to be able to add and delete other clones. And let's say that he fires the errand boy and needs to get somebody else, okay? We want we want Roy Campbell to be able to add and delete other users and be able to provision access as needed. So we're going to go into Roy Campbell here, right click, properties, and we'll say member of. And you can see that he's a member of the domain users group, but we want to take that one step further. Type in domain and say check names, and it should pop up with domain admins. Okay, we want this person to be an administrator, so we're going to add him to the group domain admins. Click OK. Click OK. Very good. Apply. OK. And just like that, Roy Campbell is an administrator to this domain controller. Easy as that. All right, let's pop out of here for a second. Next thing we're going to do is just to double check your domain controller's IP address. For me, 10.0.0.4 might be different for you. In fact, it probably will be. Next, we're going to jump over to our node in the Microsoft Azure portal, and we're going to tweak its network settings. We want to point node's DNS to the IP address of DOMCON, the domain controller. And we're going to want to do this for any other systems that you have in the network that you want to join this domain. So click on node, go to network settings, click on the NIC here. We'll go to DNS servers. And as of right now, it is inheriting the DNS from the Microsoft Azure portal. It's been assigned by Microsoft. So instead, we're going to add a custom DNS server here. So we'll say, well, it's already right here, 10.0.0.4. There we go. And we'll say save. And before this can take effect, we're going to have to restart this virtual machine. So go over to virtual machines, go to node, and we're going to click restart. Yes. Of course, this will kill the remote session that we have here. You'll see it power down in just a second. All right, kick this off. We'll just reconnect here. Sometimes it does that on your first try. Just give it another go. It takes a second for the virtual system to establish network connectivity. Okay, there we go. Simple user. And it should fire right back up. Okay, so now that we're remotely connected to our Windows 11 system, let's take a look at the changes that we made. We're going to go to Windows key R and go to the command prompt. And this time we're going to say ipconfig /all. And you can see our DNS server is pointed to 10.0.0.4, which is the one that I established over in the Microsoft Azure portal before we restarted this. Again, yours will probably be different. Okay, so now that it's pointed at our domain controller, we can now have this computer join that domain. Now, this is a little bit different for Windows 11 than it is for Windows 10, but I'm going to walk you through how it's done in Windows 11. So let's go ahead and ditch this here. And come on down to the bar here and click on settings. If it's not there, just type settings. There you go. All right. Go in here. Go over to accounts. And come down here to access, work, or school. Again, this is a little different than the process that you'd have to go through for Windows 10. But for Windows 11, we'll do that. Come up here to connect. And we're going to say join this device to a local Active Directory domain. Domain name, Foxhound. Oh, okay. I might have to enter the fully qualified domain name. Foxhound.gov. There we go. Now we need to enter an administrative account. We'll set Big Boss as an administrator here as well. Next. And we'll say restart now. All right. Be back in a second. Okay, and all we need to do to complete the joining to the domain is just to log on as we normally would. So simple user, we use the original password. Say yes. And we're in. Now if I go down here and go to settings, it should show that we are a member of this domain now. So if we go over to network and internet and click on Ethernet here, you can see that we're connected to foxhound.gov. We are in that domain. We're in that domain with the DNS server that we set up earlier, okay? And there's one more thing we need to do so that everybody else can log in. Now we just need to allow everybody else that's part of this domain to log in using remote desktop using this computer, okay? And we're gonna come over here to system. We're gonna come down to remote desktop over here and go to remote desktop users. We're going to say, I'm gonna go to add, we'll say domain, we'll check names. Okay, again, and we need to enter the name of somebody who's an administrator on the domain controller. That just makes it so that nobody else who isn't an administrator, like the errand boy, can just willy-nilly authorize access to the Foxhound domain controller from this PC. So we have to get somebody who has administrative control on the domain controller to authorize a remote connection from this computer to the domain controller. Okay, so we're gonna, again, use the Big Boss account. So we'll say Big Boss and password. All right, and we're gonna say domain users. So everybody who's a member of this domain can use this computer to log on to their account. So this will allow anybody who is in the Foxhound domain to be able to reach that domain from this specific PC. We'll say okay. And we'll say okay. Now let's test it out. Let's jump out of here real quick, log off, and then we'll try to log in to Foxhound from this system as Solid Snake. All right, just to make sure we have the right one. .221, remote desktop. Okay, we're good. Connect. More choices. We'll use the fully qualified domain name. So foxhound.gov/snake. Password. Did I accidentally put the caps lock on? Yeah, I did. Password 1. And look at that. We're now granted access to the Foxhound domain from an offsite computer. So there we go. This computer is now not only part of the Foxhound domain, but is also able to allow all users on this domain to log in from this other host on the network. So by properly setting up domain controllers and provisioning access to the domain from other devices, network and system admins can enable different users to access their accounts from any system with express permission. So whether you're setting up a remote network for employees of a company or maybe students on a centralized campus, I really hope that you found some value in this video and were able to learn a little bit more about networking. So that about does it for this video. So if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. Take care, everybody. Bye.